Hi, with parts of the hospitality sector reopening for outdoor service on the 12th of April, I thought it would be quite interesting to take a look at the broad brush weather trends for the rest of the month as they appear at the moment. So can we expect an alfresco April or not? I'm going to begin by showing a pressure pattern sequence from one computer model run. It starts at 12 GMT on Saturday the 10th of April, and I'm going to run it through the next 16 days. You should never look at one model run in isolation. So what I'm going to do is show you some data after this to see whether there's more support for the scenario which it shows. Now, the thing to look at on here is that the yellows and oranges really indicate areas of higher pressure, and that suggests an increased likelihood of dry conditions. So to begin with, what we can see is that over the UK we've got the green shadings, but out to the west we've got high pressure. Now, so it's a mixed start, but let's see what happens as I run this. And here we go. What we can see is as we go through next week, pressure builds across the UK, and by Friday the 16th of April, you can see the yellows are covering the UK. We've got high pressure centered somewhere just here, and it's looking like a pretty settled picture. If we continue this through to its end, as I say, it's going forward 16 days, and remember, as I said, it's just one computer model run. We can see that the yellows and oranges really stay over the United Kingdom. If correct, there will be day-to-day variations in the weather. Temperatures fluctuate. I'll talk about that in a moment. But it's actually painting a very settled pattern for the majority of the time once that initial, once the high pressure builds after the first few days. Now, what would it mean in terms of temperatures? Well, in the days, we should see them recovering quite nicely. This is an example. It's for 15 GMT on Friday the 16th of April, and we can see there the oranges over much of the UK, yellows and oranges are indicating values of between 12 15 Celsius. Often on these charts, the maximums are under forecast by a couple of Celsius, so perhaps we'd be going up to 16, 17. So not too bad at all during the days. Now, if we go forward to the 18th, it's a very, very similar picture. If anything, temperatures have actually increased a little bit, and we could be seeing values as high as 18, perhaps even 19 Celsius, if this specific model run turns out correct. Let's keep going forwards. This is the 24th of April, 15 GMT again. There are fewer grid points on this chart, so fewer temperature indicators, but the thing to look at is the shading. Over the United Kingdom it's orange, and over Northern Ireland too it's mainly orange. The East Coast is the exception there, for green suggesting cooler conditions near to the East Coast, so perhaps winds coming in from the east, if this is correct. But all in all, it's a pleasant picture. Now, the days may be quite warm, but the nights may well remain chilly. A lot would depend on cloud cover, strength of winds, etc. But this particular sequence is suggesting the nights would be rather cold. This is the minimum temperatures or 09 GMT, Wednesday the 14th of April, and we can see values just above freezing in much of the UK, suggesting the possibility of ground frost being quite widespread. If we go forward to 06 GMT on Thursday the 22nd of April, again, there are fewer grid points on here, but if you look down here in southern parts of England, 1 Celsius is showing that green shadings indicating chilly conditions. So the nights will be quite cold still. So pleasant days, rather cold nights on this sequence. Are other computer models supporting this high pressure scenario? Well, this is the European model. It's looking 10 days ahead. Again, it's just one model run. But this is for Tuesday, the 20th of April, and what we can see is high pressure is pretty dominant across the UK. The yellows and oranges indicating that. There are differences here. Let's not worry about those just at the moment. Looking at the Canadian model once again for the same time, and the yellows and oranges are again covering the United Kingdom, so suggesting a predominantly settled pattern. On this one, we do need to look out perhaps down to the southeast over the continent there. There's potential for an area of low pressure to come into play. But taken at face value, it's not looking at all bad. So those were the snapshots from the operational model runs. The GFS was a sequence, then we saw ECM, the European model, and then the GEM, which is the Canadian. Now, I'll just look at some ensemble data from the GEFS. This is where the same model gets run over and over again. In the case of GFS, it's 30 instances of it. And what they do is they tweak the starting conditions of each instance. And so that the idea being that if you adjust the starting conditions to help account for uncertainty in the real world, and if it then goes on to show a similar outcome many times, you can have a higher degree of confidence in that particular outcome. However, if the runs diverge vastly and you get a whole series of possible scenarios by tweaking the starting conditions, then the confidence in any of those particular outcomes is reduced significantly. So what we're looking for here is for runs to be clustered close together, and that would then support a given outcome. And this is the 16-day plot for London, which is showing forecast surface level pressure from all of the runs in the GEFS ensemble. And I've annotated it because what's quite clear on this is higher pressure is favoured for much of the period. Towards through the middle of the period, most of the runs are showing higher than average pressure. There is some divergence, but the general trend there at the moment appears to be quite clear. It's really as we head into the last week of April that a downward trend begins to appear, and the runs really start to show different scenarios. So we've got pressure ranging from about 1,000 millibars in the last week up to about 1,035 millibars. So it's a wide range. Having said that, even then, most of the individual runs do seem to be supporting average or higher than average pressure, which would lend support to that drier scenario even then. Although, as the pressure does decline through the last week of the month, if this was to be correct, you would then expect there to be an increasing risk of showers or longer spells of rain, but not particularly wet based on this data. Now, looking at the same plot for Manchester, I won't go into the details here because it's really a very similar pattern, not much difference at all. And going up to the northwest of the UK, up to Glasgow, once again, it's a very similar pattern. And even towards the end here, pressure probably remaining above the 30-year average, according to most of the runs in the ensemble. Of course, as I say, it's important to emphasise there is that uncertainty, there is that spread of outcomes developing as you go further forwards. But nonetheless, if you had to make a call on it based upon this data, you would say that the likelihood is, even as we head towards the end of April, pressure is more likely to be above average than below average. In turn, that suggests it's more likely to be drier than average than wetter than average. That's a simple way of looking at it. There are many other variables, but for now that will do. Just to show you the forecast rainfall from the two recent GFS operational snapshot model runs, so not the ensemble data, but the individual runs from the GFS 0Z and GFS 06Z, so the 0Z being initiated 6 hours earlier. These charts show accumulated rainfall from each of those two runs for the next 10 days, and it's in millimetres. And what we can see here is the values are pretty low across most of the United Kingdom. They're a little bit higher in places. It's somewhat patchy, but not wet at all. And then if we look at the 6Z model run here, it's a similar story. Again, there are going to be differences because they're just individual snapshots. And when you're looking 10 days ahead, it's for trends, as I say, so don't focus on the details here. The key points to note are both of these charts are suggesting that it won't be particularly wet anywhere in the United Kingdom. So to summarise that, high pressure looks like bringing an increased chance of dry periods through much of the rest of April, although perhaps it will be declining in the last week. Saying that, the day-to-day details will vary, and even with higher than average pressure, that doesn't rule out the risk of showers or longer spells of rain at times in all parts of the United Kingdom. Of course, there will be regional variability as well. One or two of the charts there were showing the chance of it being cooler near to the east coast. For example, if there's a wind coming in from the east or the northeast, that would really depend on where high pressure became centred. And also there's the possibility of it being more changeable, particularly in the west and northwest if high pressure begins to decline southwards, southeastwards. And the key point there as well to make in the last week of April is that with that general trend for pressure to decline, if this model data is correct, it would indicate the growing chance of wetter conditions at times, but as I say, not overly wet. Daytime temperatures look like they will increase after the first few days. It's a cold start initially, but they do quite readily pick up. But the nights are looking like remaining chilly under those areas of high pressure. Now, I'll just finish by giving the warning here. It's important to remember that even when using broad brush trends for more than a few days ahead, when we're looking here 3 weeks ahead effectively, there's a scope for much change as the time approaches. Ensemble data can change quite significantly over relatively short periods of time. So this is just intended to be a guide, and the best advice is, with that day-to-day variability, the potential for change, do keep up to date with the short-range weather forecasts. So thank you for watching this. I hope you found it useful. Fingers crossed that it will prove to be reasonably along the right track. But as I say, that's never a given in the UK. If you enjoyed it, please hit the like and subscribe buttons below. Thanks now. Bye.